We had Justin for a few minutes, but we started talking about babies. Oh, he's back!
That's really funny.
It was funny, actually.
All right, let me get my headphones so that we're not having feedback.
Can you guys hear me at all?
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, Justin.
Okay. Sorry,
Justin, welcome.
I originally joined the meeting and I couldn't. For some reason, my sound wasn't being picked up. So.
Oh, okay.
And I'm sorry, I've never really been to a meeting. I think Sherry, I met with you one time right at the end of a meeting.
Yep.
But the way that my job works is normally Fridays and Saturdays. They're like 15-hour days. And so when we first started this semester, that wasn't the case, but it became, that was kind of how the trend started happening. So thank you for being patient with me.
Yeah, no problem. That's a long day for you.
Yeah, it does get pretty long.
Awesome, but you're here now. Woohoo!
All right. So, could anyone give us a summary of the case study?
Which was this week? I'm trying to remember.
I know this is looking at all the 4 different people to hire.
Oh yeah, I could never keep track of them.
I can't either because I have other classes. I have 2 other classes that have case studies, so I just have to remember which case I am.
Okay, you want me to do it, Nicole? I can.
Go for it.
Okay. So we read Recruitment of a Star. I have my notes right here. And what happened was that at this company, like a bank company, Reuben Stern and Hertz, Stephen Connor, the director of research at the banking firm, took the resignation of one of their senior analysts in semiconductor technologies. So he needed to go and find someone else. And what he decided is to temporarily promote the junior analyst, Rena Shea. And then he went out and started trying to find what he would call a star in the field of, as senior analysts, people who had made a known name for themselves in other banking industries or investment companies, so that he could bring them in to be the team lead for their semiconductors. So basically what we did is he went to a headhunter. He started talking to people in other companies or within his own, trying to get names of people. And he was given David Hughes, Gerald Baum, Sonia Mitha, Seth Horkham. There's a couple other, but he threw those out immediately. And he proceeded to do the interviewing process in like a comfortable setting, like at a restaurant first, and then brought them in and did formal interviews on them, and that's where it's at.
I know there was a lot going on. By the end of the case, I had forgotten about Renee, because she was just kind of disappeared from from the whole interview process. So it says now to discuss the pros and cons in depth with all the different candidates. So,
Maybe we could each take one.
Okay, that'd be wonderful.
Do you want me to start with David Hughes?
Yeah, that'd be wonderful.
I kind of got the feeling that David Hughes was looking to sort of lighten his workload and increase his salary. So he was a ranked star analyst, and he had a long career, a very successful career. He was a good mentor, but it seemed definitely in his interviews that he was pushing towards how much can you guarantee that I will make, and also when he was talking about how he was letting some of his junior analysts handle more of the workload and the things that he was kind of moving towards an end game, I think, for his career. I can't think of anything else about him. But
I thought it was interesting reading the case study that he talked about going on vacation with his grandkids and how he didn't take a call or something to that effect. And like as a person, I'm like, woohoo, good for you for like putting family first. But then as a business person trying to figure out who to hire, I'm like, ooh, that's a red flag. You don't want someone who's going to not do their work because of family. And I thought that was a weird, I don't know, like it was a weird two-faced thing that I was experiencing as I read it.
Yeah. I think the more I read this whole case study, the more I thought, I never want to ever aspire to work on Wall Street. It's not like conducive to having a life outside of work at all. So lucky for me, that just passed right by. I'm good. Arizona is way far from Wall Street.
Yeah. Okay, you want me to take Gerald Baum? I can do that. Okay, so he's been in the industry for like 15 years, but is just now kind of making a name for himself as a star. I wrote in my notes, he wasn't a team player. He was more interested in making money. He came late to the meeting and then was unapologetic for it. He was really negative about his current job. A little bit prideful about where he was at, wanted to bring in his own junior analysts, instead of working with the ones that are already there. He fired some people right in the middle of a meeting that he was having in front of everybody. And he asked a lot about the money. So some of the things that I thought about him was that, and then what I thought was interesting is later on in the read that the junior analyst he wanted to bring with him didn't want to come with him. So that was really telling about who he was, right? What kind of a personality it was, that this person was like, no, I'm not going with you, even if it had been a better job, they just didn't want to go with him. So, so I think that, he was really driven. He was an achiever. He was intelligent, but I don't know how he would have fit into the culture of the company that wanted to bring him on.
Does he remind you or remind anyone else of Thomas Green from last week?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sonia?
Out in the middle of the meeting, stuff like that, just like Thomas Green.
Yeah, exactly. This is maybe not the person that is the best culture fit for a really cooperative team dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Who would like to do Sonia?
Ooh, me. Can I do Sonia?
Of course.
Awesome. I really liked Sonia. As I was reading it, she was my favorite. And then, anyway, we can get into that later. So Sonia was from a smaller firm, not on Wall Street. It was in Connecticut, but she really seemed to have a good grasp on what was going on in the semiconductor industry and trends in the market. She interviewed really well, and her questions, in contrast to all these men who were so money focused, were culture focused. So she was really interested in how does the culture work, how would I fit into the culture, and then at the very end, one of her very last questions was like, oh yeah, compensation, how does that work? And so it seemed almost like her train of thought was more in line with how could I fit into this company, as opposed to like, what will this company give me? But the con for Sonia was that she was a single mother of two, and that's going to be really hard in this 24 hours a day, 7 days a week position to juggle being a single parent and working. So the travel factor seemed to be big for everyone who interviewed with her, that she was wary of travel, that she was asking, how much can I not travel? However, it did say that her personality, her ability to work conference calls and stuff like we're doing right now, kind of mitigated some of their fears when they met with her. So it was more like a nebulous, like, someone wants to do this job and not travel? That's weird. I don't know if it'll work. And then they met with her and they're like, oh, well, she has a really good handle and we can do this, we can communicate without her being in person. So, I liked that, looking at my notes real quick, that in the interview, Tom, sorry, who's the main character of our little story? I forget.
Stephen.
He was talking with Sonia, and he said, we can make concessions. We need to be a more accommodating workforce. So, we could make concessions for this travel thing. But the other concern for Sonia, and I'll try to be fast, is that she doesn't have experience on Wall Street. So she's a wild card just because she's up and coming, she's doing great work, but the workload on Wall Street is so much greater that it could be overwhelming and she could just fizzle and not perform well. So that was you can't interview yourself out of that one, but that was another concern that people had. And
you guys have any other thoughts on her? No? Justin, would you want to do Seth?
Yep. So, Seth is actually my favorite. What I thought was good about him was the fact that he was kind of a rising star, but according to himself, he was. But also, I read in the second round of interviews that people that were already at the firm knew of him and knew of his work. One thing that I was impressed with is that he did have a plan already. When Stephen asked him why he wanted to, jump ship and come over to RSH, he said that RSH really has the platform, I think is the word that he used, to really help build his name. And it sounded like I don't know if he was particularly young, but he was at least growing and up and coming in the industry, but already had in with quite a few CEOs and other people on Wall Street. And so I really liked that aspect of him. He seemed like he had really good work from what I read, and I don't know if there's a whole lot more that I could say. He didn't seem like he was too prideful, too full of himself. He was confident, but I think that he didn't quite cross the line over into being prideful, which I think really would benefit the RSH team, because I feel like they are more team-based, team-focused. They're not, the same where Gerald Baum comes from, where it was, how much money can I make? How quick can I make it? I'm going to, beat all of my coworkers, rather than having a good, healthy relationship with them.
I agree with that. And he was the one that was with his company too for like 15 years, right?
I don't know if he's been there maybe 15 years. I know he's only been with one company. It was the company he started with. So, and he was a little concerned that he kind of had been tapped out there.
Yeah. All right. So I guess I'll do, we kind of did Renee, but like Gary was saying about Renee, she was one of those juniors that was moved up temporarily, and then he kind of hung her by a string, not knowing if she would get the permanent position or not. But like I said, by the end of the article, I had kind of forgotten about her because she wasn't in any of the interviews, and he slightly talked to her on the side, and stuff, and let her know that he was starting to interview. So for me, I kind of slowly forgot about her and looking at the other. You guys have any thoughts on Renee?
I thought that she, I don't know, maybe it wasn't thoughts on her personally, but thoughts on like generally the culture at RSH was that they really worked within and promoted people within, and they really valued that culture of developing people and retaining the people. And that's why it was such a such a shock when, I think his name was Peter, quit, because they had invested so much in him, and the expectation, their culture was that he would stay. And so I felt like if they didn't give Rena at least a shot, they would be taking that company culture and kind of saying, well, it's the company culture for everyone except for you. So I thought that even though there wasn't as much information for interviews, she was already in the company. She already had the experience with PowerChip, the big deal that was going through. She was performing adequately up to this point. Like, there was no mention in the article about how she was not able to fill the position. And when he went and talked with her in person, and she, was a little scared that here it comes, I'm getting fired or pulled up from the team, she was able to say, look, I've hit every metric so far. I'm doing a good job. And I think per the supplemental readings that we had, that's a higher indicator of success than the fact that someone is a shooting star or shining star or whatever at another company. Because when you pull them over, their ratings are going to tank, and it will take them years, maybe months, but it's going to take them a while to get back up to that level of performance.
I had that same thought about Rena. And in the article, the reading that I did, the only negative thing that I saw anybody mention about her is that she needed to be a little more assertive in her presentations. And I thought that would be not a difficult thing to mentor. That's something that somebody could learn. And also wanting her to be more outgoing. And I thought, well, they kind of set her up for being a little, I don't know, self-conscious or under, just not having a lot of faith in herself because of how Steven has played this whole thing. Here I'm putting you in this position. He asked her to stay and not move with Peter, which she did, because apparently that's something that junior analysts move with senior. So he did that from the beginning, split up those two, got her to stay. She's working in that position, and then he immediately, because of pressure from above, from this boss that doesn't believe in development and doesn't believe in that culture of mentoring, is pressuring him. And so he goes out and starts interviewing all these people. Well, of course, that's going to make her be a little bit more kind of gun shy, a little less assertive. I think that would do that for me. So I had the same sort of thoughts about Rena, thinking, yeah, if he would show some faith in her and some mentoring, I think that she could definitely be more of a powerful presenter. I think that that's something that she could learn. She's got all the education for it. She's put in the time with the company that I thought they should show some more faith in her, give her a chance at it.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting too, as with her, that she kind of wasn't even in the interview process. The time that he spent researching everyone else, getting recommendations, even, the interview process, he didn't do that with her. And I think it might have been different if he had let her, brought her in the same way. And I think I made a comment on there as, like here at BYU Idaho, they'll have 1-year hires or they'll have adjuncts. And then when a full-time position comes open, even though you're a 1-year hire, you still have to go through the entire process that everyone else does. The same interview process, the same teach a class observation process. And I kind of felt like she missed that. And maybe if she had that opportunity, maybe she could have, shown who she really was, instead of like you said, Jonelle, that would be really intimidating.
Yeah.
To have all these stars brought in and you're not lumped in with them.
Yeah, but you know what? What a confidence boost if she had been. Like just the kind of HR or I guess psychology side. Like if she had been interviewed and considered at the same level as all of those stars, like as a person, that would have given her so much confidence.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, they didn't. That's unfortunate.
All right. So the next question is, who would you guys hire and why? would like to go first? That's a hard one.
It is. There were so many. I felt like there were so many. The balance was so even on so many of the people that they had really good qualities, but they had some really, like, for me, things that were really big red flags that I was almost like, there's nobody that's perfect for this job. Like, they're all kind of, they can do it, but they're not great. So my recommendation was, excuse me, to keep Rena Shea as the senior analyst, but to hire Sonia and bring her in as a junior analyst. And I don't know if that works, but that's my suggestion. Bring her in as a junior analyst so that she gets experience working in Wall Street, and she can bring her ideas and all of the pros that she had, bring those all into the company, and then the company can mentor her in to working on Wall Street. And as a junior analyst, she might not have as many travel requirements, so that would be another. I'm all about smooth transitions in this case, I guess. So bring her in, it's a smoother transition, and you are promoting that hiring from within and that company culture that is already established. And then my hope was that if Sonia is able to prove herself as a junior analyst, then she can get promoted to a different project as a senior analyst, and then the company just benefits two ways with, good employees. That was mine.
That was exactly what I wrote. But so Sonia is currently a senior analyst. So I was hoping that Stephen would have to play that up to her. That it's like, okay, so it's not really a step down moving from a small boutique firm to Wall Street. Even that's still a step up, coming from a senior at a small one to a junior at this bigger one. And it sounds like, as far as salary is concerned, it's probably not going to be a step down for her either. So, but that's exactly what I said.
So I had a different take on it. At first I thought that same thought, but then, as I looked at with Rena, she had mixed reviews from the leadership. Like, I just didn't feel like they had trust in her that she could do the job. And then when she didn't fight for it, when she didn't go in and say, hey, interview me, or, she just didn't fight for it. She was really kind of just meh, you know what I mean? Like, she's going to do it. So I thought about, this is Wall Street, and you've got to be bullish. You have to have, even if you don't have confidence, you have to act like you have confidence to go out there and get the information that you need. And I saw that I really felt like Sonia had that, because if you looked at the rankings, she at a small boutique firm was already ranked number 8, which was above Gerald Baum. He was ranked number 11, right? And so here she's doing all of this with 2 children. She's making a name for herself. She already knew people in the industry and had already made a name for herself. So I felt like they should bring Sonia in because she's a rising star. I would have loved to see Rena have that mentorship, but I just didn't feel like she had what it took to be a senior. She just didn't have the aggressive achiever enough in her to go for it, to fight for it, and to make it work, whereas Sonia did. And in that environment, and especially on Wall Street, in a bank, semiconductors, you've got to have someone who's going to be a little aggressive, who's going to be a little very self-confident, that kind of personality. And poor little Rena, I didn't think had it.
Same as you, Sherry. I put Sonia in the position as well. But yeah, I saw it because like the cons that we all talked about, that like Erin talked about with her having 2 kids and not wanting to travel and being at home. Like, I saw those and I was worried about them, but then, like Erin said too, he was willing to work with her. And during her second interview, when they brought Sonia in, that kind of everything that they felt negative about her were pushed off once they saw her interacting with like the foreign clients and different things. So yeah, I did the same as Sherry with that. Justin, who did you pick?
Yeah, I think that Justin maybe picked a boy, but maybe I'm just being really sexist right now.
No, I did. I picked Seth, and I don't know. For me, I liked, he had good experience from what I remember reading, but I liked his personality and his drive of where he wanted to go. And to me, he seemed like the kind of person who could be molded rather than someone who already has their own set structure. It would be difficult to train them. But maybe that's the nature of the industry. They're only really looking for somebody who has the skill set, knows what they're doing, and they don't really need to train too much. But I feel like from what I gathered, Stephen really is concerned about the company culture more than just about anything else. And I just felt like Seth would fit that culture and kind of mold to it, along with bringing all of his experience, which, wasn't much compared to some of the other candidates, but I do think that it was quality experience. This is the best way to put it. But I would say it was a tie between Sonia and Seth, but I ended up picking Seth in the long run.
I'm glad that you picked someone different so that there's not just a single consensus.
All right, so now
that his sorry, can I just interrupt real quick, Nicole?
Yeah,
do you think, Justin, that his time at the, and I don't remember all what his other firm was, but do you think that is indicative that he would stay at RSH long term and that he's not just jumping around?
I think so, yeah. I think that, I don't know how old he was or how much longer he had left in his career. I'd imagine at least 20 years. But he could stay there that entire length of time and really develop a good, strong relationship. And if he's already making a name for himself where he's at now, he can only continue to do that in an even bigger and larger firm. And I think as long as they're treating him right, he would stay.
I think that could be said for anyone, right? Like if you're in a company and they're treating you right, you're probably going to stay.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Sorry to interrupt, Nicole.
Oh, no problem. I'm going to attempt to figure out how to share my screen because now we're going to look at what their potential salaries will be. Can you guys see that?
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thank you.
Is it back off again?
No, I see it. I see it. It's
I was trying to still see you guys.
Yeah, that doesn't work. It's so unfortunate.
All right. Not working. Okay. So this is their salary, their current salary, and what their salary would be RSA. So I want you guys to look at it for a couple minutes and then ask, and then see if you guys would change your mind on the candidate you chose based on the pay that they would get.
So I think it's interesting in these case studies because you can kind of look at it from different facets. So you've got like the personal, like, oh, he's staying home with his grandkids. That's so great. And then the other facet is, that's terrible. Why is he taking time off work? So then you have another facet here of like, how much is this going to cost the company? The company needs to make money, not spend it on, like, obviously you have to spend it on employees, but the least that you can spend on employees and still generate quality work, the better. So I just thought it was interesting as I've seen this to kind of consider, oh, if we go with Rena or Sonia, then we're saving money because we're not spending so much on their salary. So that's a good business decision too. And Seth is not that bad either.
How do you think about that, the money involved in the person that's put on? That was interesting. David's like 5 times as much as Renee's salary would be.
Yeah.
So if I understand these salaries correctly, though, aren't they based off of commission? There's a base salary, then it's including commission.
Yeah,
don't
I
know.
think so. I think that's what my understanding was. It was as well, and I think that yeah, you've got this base, which is part of your experience and also your ranking. So David was ranked number 2, and I think that's part why his salary is so much higher.
Mm-hmm.
They expect you to bring in this reputation and already these different connections. And your name. And so when people are reading this analysis is by David Hughes, and they recognize that name. It's about name recognition, you know.
Sure.
Yeah.
Just because I think, at least for me, if I was in Steven's situation or even anybody above him, I would think, salary is somewhat relevant, but not as relevant. Only because, if these were all strictly base salaries that we were comparing, I would think that would be play a little more, I guess, be a stronger factor. But because they're commission based, the way I look at it is if they're being paid more for commission, that means they are most likely bringing more to the table as well. And they could be bringing in more business. So David probably would bring in more business than Rena would, at least initially. Now, I'm not saying that Rena couldn't go through and 5 years down the road, maybe she won't quite have the name that David has, but she could still be bringing in a lot of business and making a name for herself.
Yeah. I think going back to the supplemental. I'm trying to look at the risky business of hiring stars, where it documents how that if you're hiring someone because of that top performance status, and then you move them over, their performance tanks. And so as I was reading the case study, it didn't seem like they were looking for someone who would be a rising star in the future. They needed someone who was going to perform well right now. And so that, for me, the risk of bringing someone and then having the stock price drop and having the performance of that person drop was going to be a huge liability for the immediate, that power chip deal that they're working on and the other immediate needs of the company. Maybe that was the only immediate need, but it felt like a big one as I was reading the case study. Excuse me. So here's a thing. So when you hire a star, he leaves all that support that he had in his old company behind. All the the junior analysts that are making him a star that you don't really see because it's only him that's being rated. So his performance flags. Worse, his group's performance slip as resentment over the star's spectacular hiring package corrodes morale and productivity. So everyone else knows that he's being brought in and at a premium. So they're not going to work as hard because why didn't Rena get that position when she's been doing so good thus far? And meanwhile, the company market value erodes as investors decide that you overpaid for this star. So I don't think with Seth that would be as much of an issue, but with is it David that was 5 times?
Yeah, David.
Like that, I think could definitely be a factor that the morale of the team is going to drop when you bring someone in and they're getting paid so much more. And that's been my experience in business too. When you have someone that's hired from outside the company brought in and you know that they were paid lots of money to switch to this new company, it's harder to work with them, which is kind of like it's an odd thing, but it's just harder to work with them.
So would anyone change their mind based on any of the salaries at all? I think we all chose kind of the lower end of everyone. The lower end of the pay scale.
Mm-hmm. Look at that. We're already business financial savvy.
All right, so I'm going to stop sharing. There we go. Okay, so the next question was, should Stephen give Renee a permanent offer or hire outside from the company? I guess we kind of already kind of discussed that. Kind of some of us felt like she should be given the permanent offer, and then well, I guess both of them too, hire outside. Also, I guess
yeah, we've got votes for, but hire everyone. I feel like that's the consensus right now. Hire everyone.
Yeah.
All of them, if they're good.
So the next question was, should Stephen have let Peter go? Because I guess he could have countered with him, but he decided not to counter the new company's offer. So what do you guys think on that?
I must have read it differently because when I read, and I didn't reread it very carefully, but when I read it, I was under the impression that he just like retired, not that he quit and went to a different firm. So maybe I must have missed a sentence or a paragraph, because when I read that, I was cheating because I thought I wouldn't make it to the meeting. So I read all these discussion questions and I was like, what? He could have countered, like, you didn't have to let him go. I didn't get that from the case study at all. That question kind of threw me for a loop.
Well, about 2 months before he left, one of the other senior analysts had warned Stephen that that Peter was unhappy, and it sounds like Stephen just didn't really do anything on that. And I thought that really kind of went against the whole culture of the team building. Maybe Stephen just got really comfortable with the idea that everyone likes working here and we're all one happy family, and that's how things work. And maybe Peter's departure sort of, maybe he was kind of in denial that would actually happen. But the fact that he knew about it and didn't do anything, I thought that was a mistake. At the very least, go in and try to find the reasons why, so that moving forward with their team that's remaining, they would be able to solve those kinds of issues, whatever it is that really got Peter to leave.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, that if you have this company culture, it doesn't stay automatically. You still have to work at it. So that's a good thought.
So the next one was kind of an interesting question, because I thought about it for like a second while reading it. But it said, should Stephen have talked to the recruiter to ask about Seth? Because it was another recruiter that called Stephen to ask if he could get an interview with him, and he was always wondering why his recruiter never mentioned Seth. So what do you guys think on that?
Just a quick question. I'm so sorry, guys. I do have to take off now.
No problem.
So I figured I did just join for a little bit. But for the case activity, what is when it asks for a post, does the group leader take care of that post?
Yeah. So I'll post like a link to the group. Yeah.
Okay, I thought so. I was trying to read through it, and I know that's how it was in the past, but for some reason I was a little bit confused this week about it. So thank you guys, and thanks again for being patient. I don't know for sure my schedule next week if this time works or not, but we have a good email thread going, so I'll be able to let you know.
Okay. Cool. Thanks,
Awesome.
Justin.
All right. Thank you all.
Yeah. All right, what was the question? Sorry, Nicole, I totally blanked. What was the question?
I know it's kind of a confusing question. So should Stephen have talked to the recruiter about Seth? About his own recruiter about Seth?
Yes, that was one of the things that I was like, why isn't Tom his main recruiter? Why isn't he talking about Seth, and why? Yeah, I think he should have.
Yeah, I agree. It's just to find out his pros and cons with Seth, because obviously there was some kind of name with Seth, and he was the one that he was named as like up and coming, right? He got that rank of the up and coming. So it was really interesting that was never, he was never in the view of his recruiter.
Yeah. Well, and I wonder if part of it is that he just didn't have it known that he was looking, that he was available. Because sometimes, and you're right, because Seth is ranked number 5. I mean, he's higher than Gerald. But my thought would be Tom didn't know that Seth was available because he'd been at that company for so long. I did have in my notes 15 years. Okay. It's the first company he was at. And maybe they just didn't know that he was looking to move. But yeah, he should have asked. He should have talked to Tom about that and did a little more digging.
I agree. And it sounds like he kind of got the rank and then quickly jumped to wanting to leave the company. Kind of what I got from the article too, is that he kind of quickly wanted to jump ship, to the new company.
Well, from that though, I think it was because the company that he was at was very competitive, and compensation and recognition was all based off of your ranking. So he had worked, kind of sounds like, in a really kind of competitive, kind of cutthroat environment all those years, and he finally got that recognition, the ranking, and then nothing happened. He didn't get compensated for it. There was no recognition. And so I think he felt really burned by, I think it was Jefferson Brothers was the name of the firm. But in thinking about that environment that he came from, though, he would be really not prepared at all for the culture at RSH. Like, it was a completely different sort of structure, the way they collaborated and helped one another, and how the team's performance was more important than anybody's individual rankings. Like, culturally, he was going to be a really hard fit for that company. But yeah, I could see why he would want to leave after he had he sacrificed his marriage. And did you guys read that? Yeah. I felt kind of like Seth is kind of a sad guy. Like, he's just doing anything he can to keep this job and to perform, and then he finally does, and they don't do anything for him. And I'm like, well, I could see why he was kind of not happy about that.
Yeah, I kind of thought that the culture thing, the culture difference was similar with all of, it sounds so sexist, but all of the guys came from very, maybe not as cutthroat as Jefferson, but cutthroat companies where they really, really had to prove their worth at the expense of other people. And so coming over to RSH was going to be difficult for any of them, just culturally. So to me, that was another benefit of hiring Rena or Sonia, because they were either already in the company or they didn't have that. It's always harder to unlearn something than to learn a new skill, right? So I guess that's where I was going. And I wish Justin was still here so he could defend Seth a little bit more. But I totally agree with you, Janelle, that he worked so hard and didn't get recognition. And so from thinking about it from his point of view, yeah, I want out. I want to be recognized for the good work that I'm doing.
But I'm not sure he would be really happy at RSH with the way that it's more about the team and the team's performance. I think he was not really a great fit.
Yeah. I felt who was the old guy?
David.
Yes. He probably would have been the best fit culturally. Mm-hmm. But like you were talking about earlier, when you did his pros and cons, he's phasing himself out, or has the potential to really just kind of do a little bit of work and then retire.
Yeah, and maybe he's thinking also, because he's already made a name for himself and he knows that they have such a team culture at the new place, that he could come in, bring his name and a little bit that he knows, but then use the team to do the work so that he could spend more time with his family.
and still make $1.5 million.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
That'd be nice. Oh, man.
Oh dear, still not worth it. It just still doesn't sound like any kind of lifestyle that I would like or aspire to ever. And I felt kind of bad for all of them. I felt like for Sonia, like, take the quieter job in Connecticut. You know, move out of the city and don't do the reverse commute. Live there and enjoy your 0.3 million or 0.4 million, whatever she's getting. I was like, well, $400,000. I mean, even in Connecticut, I'm sure that's a decent living for her. But that's just my own personal, like, that's completely off the point of the case, I'm sure.
Oh, that's funny.
No, I don't think there's too much else. I think we kind of covered it all, and thank you guys for bearing with me.
You did great.
Yeah, I think you did wonderful.
You did great.
So did it ever tell us who he hired? It didn't, did it?
No, that was so bummed. I thought after last week's, like, hearing the rest of the story, I kind of like peeked ahead. I was like, oh, I want to see how I had written my paper. I just wanted to see how it had turned out. I was like, you don't get to find out. That's just lame.
Kind of sad.
Oh no, I bet he posted in Brother Freeze in the announcements next week. I'm hoping.
Oh yeah.
I also want the rest of the story. Come on.
Oh dear. So for next week, Justin said he's not sure what his schedule is, but what about the rest of us that are here? What does next week look like for you? Do we want to go back to the Thursday?
I'm good with going back to Thursday.
Okay. And was it 10 o'clock, right?
Yeah, 10 o'clock. I just have once a month where I teach a class at the library at 10:30, and so the internet connection's not super great, so I couldn't just do 10 o'clock and then leave early like Justin did. So it's just once a month that I'm a little wonky.
No worries.
So I really appreciate you guys like accommodating me and switching everything around. It's great that Justin was able to make it too.
For sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's tentatively say Thursday at 10 for next week, and we'll check with Justin, we'll check with Leonardo, and see if that works. But I prefer to go back to Thursdays too. So.
Perfect.
Good. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thanks,
Bye.
Nicole. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hey, you guys have a
Bye.
Bye.
Yep, you too. Bye-bye.